that's enough for today.
Good. No, please get that thing away from me.
It's nothing but a spider. I still don't understand how anyone can be frightened of a spider.
How about a horse? Who could be frightened of such a beautiful creature? Mrs. Kerr, please. And Mr. Phelps, that's enough. Sarah, you tolerated much better today. Well done. Sarah, I'm so proud of you.
You were so brave. I swear you'll be out of here soon. I thought my heart was going to burst.
Are you ready to try again tomorrow? It's important that you continue, Sarah. Dr. Όγκτεν, are you sure you should be pushing her?
It's all right, Pauline. I can do it.
Good. Then I'll see you all again tomorrow. Dr. Linden, how can I help you?
So she was able to tolerate a few more seconds today. Congratulations.
More than that. Her pulse was close to normal. Her respiration much slower than yesterday.
So at this rate, in another year, she'll be cured. Arachnophobia gone to the wind.
There's no need for sarcasm.
Then let me be plain. My treatment regimen would be much more effective.
I don't agree.
These people's mental anguish is the result of physical maladies, likely an infection, possibly the teeth. Exposing them to their fears will do nothing to help them.
Again, I don't agree.
You are not helping them.
Well, we'll see. But believe me, we have the same goal. To relieve the pain that these poor people feel as soon as possible.
And my opinion is you are making their fears much worse.
Good day, Doctor. Excuse me. Sarah! Oh, my God.
Her neck's broken. At least the poor thing didn't suffer. Who found her?
One of the attendants. She died hours ago. Rigor's already begun.
Anything else?
I suspect a broken neck.
Julia, is it possible she took her own life?
I really don't think so, William.
Why was she here?
She's part of a group I'm treating, people suffering from phobic terrors.
I see.
William, she was in good spirits. I'd hope that one day soon she'd be released. Her husband. Mr. Boson.
What happened?
I don't know.
Why are the constabulary here?
They're simply investigating.
You said she was doing well. More than that, you said she was going to be able to come home soon.
I thought she was. I'm so sorry.
She was my wife. I'm not sure sorry is enough.
Please, no need to stop.
What are you doing here? I didn't know anyone was here.
You play beautifully.
No one was supposed to hear.
We're here to see Sarah Boson's room. Which one might that be?
Third one down there. You didn't hear me too?
Wax in my ears.
You'll find it locked. Sarah always locked her door.
We'll find a key.
No note seems to have been left behind.
Looks like she was out of bed in a hurry, sir.
Perhaps she was frightened.
Why not just run out into the hall?
Good question. The window's still latched.
She must have been mightily terrified, sir. To plunge to your death through a window without even opening it?
Indeed.
Each one is terrified of something.
And your course of treatment?
Systematic desensitization. It's been used in cases of nervous phobias for centuries.
Was she making progress?
They all were. Mrs. Kerr is able to tolerate a feather within 2 feet of her face, which is a great improvement. Harry Phelps is not as nervous around horses anymore. Imelda Krask is getting over her fear of playing in public. And Sarah Boson, I thought she was progressing.
Julia, I'm sorry to have to ask this, but is it possible that knowing that she had to face her fears again caused her to do this?
No.
Are you sure?
Despite objections, this is a valid therapy.
Objections?
Dr. Charles Linden, he thinks my methods are misguided. He's complained to the administration a number of times. He's as much as blamed me for Sarah's death. I don't need you to do the same.
What have you, Dr. Grace?
The cause of death was indeed a broken neck. Poor thing. Given the condition of her hands, I think she used them to break through the window. Would have hurt.
Anything else that was unusual?
Just that she did it at all. I don't think I've ever been that scared of anything. I thought I was scared of water once, so I worked up the courage and I marched myself right in. No one could have done that for me.
You believe Dr. Ogden is wasting her time?
I have nothing but admiration for Dr. Ogden.
For such a direct young woman, that's an unusually evasive answer.
Mr. Kerr.
I need a word. Pauline and I have talked. I think it might be best if I removed her from this institution. I'm not so sure you're doing her any good.
Well, that is your choice, Mr. Kerr. But Pauline, like the other patients, is slowly gaining control of her phobia.
Frankly, I find this whole business a little ridiculous.
What whole business?
These fears or phobias or whatever you call them, people supposedly terrified of things that could never actually harm them.
Your wife does have a phobia, but it is possible to treat.
Oh, good Lord, woman. She's terrified of feathers. What could a feather possibly do to her?
To you and I, it does seem strange. But we're not talking about the rational mind, Mr. Kerr. Your wife is quite aware that her feelings are irrational, but she experiences intense fear nonetheless.
I visited her again last evening.
And?
Now she refuses to engage in relations with me. Far from curing her, you seem to be making matters worse. Dr. Ogden, it's normal for a man to expect a conjugal connection with his wife, isn't it?
Of course. Mr. Kerr, please remember that Pauline is making progress.
1 more week. I left her in your care to make her well, and you're failing. Let's go.
Let me get this straight, Murdoch. This young woman, in the prime of life, intelligent and from a good family, was so afraid to face a spider that she may have killed herself.
It's a possibility, sir, but I am disinclined to believe it.
And why is that?
Well, sir, if Sarah Boson had planned to take her own life, I highly doubt she would have flung herself headlong through a closed window. Something frightened her into action.
Are you telling me that a spider scared her to death?
Something may have.
When I was in Afghanistan, we had spiders as big as your hand. Ugly, furry things. One bite from them and you're a goner. But a Canadian spider? What's a Canadian spider going to do to you?
Well, sir, it doesn't really matter what it could or couldn't do. These people's fears are irrational. One is even frightened of feathers.
Feathers?
Oh, yes, sir. Fear of spiders, insects, even a fear of flies is not uncommon.
Flies? Flies? I'll give you flies. Flies are bloody pests, I'll grant you. But they're hardly dangerous. There's only one way to deal with flies, Murdoch. Let's show 'em who's boss.
Yes, sir.
What's next?
I'd like to continue the investigation.
Are you sure this requires your attention?
Well, sir, Dr. Ogden seems convinced that Mrs. Boson would not have taken her own life.
And that's enough?
Enough for me.
Carry on.
All of my patients are here of their own accord, except for Mrs. Kerr. She was committed by her husband.
The one afraid of the feathers.
Yes, although she seems to have developed another malady.
What's that?
She now seems unwilling to enter into sexual congress with her husband.
Are the two issues related?
I'm not sure.
Julia, has anyone else been in Sarah Boson's room since she died?
Not that I'm aware of.
Could this be the reason Mrs. Bosun jumped to her death? Could someone have entered her room, deposited this spider?
I suppose.
Someone from another part of the asylum.
But my ward is locked. The only people who have access are the people in my phobia group.
Mrs. Bosun's room was locked. What of your other patients?
Only Mr. Phelps. I locked his door from the outside.
Why is that?
He says he sleepwalks. The first night they were all here, Mrs. Bosun found him standing in her doorway, scared her half out of her wits. He claims he has no remembrance of it.
Claims. You don't trust him?
I could never be sure. A young man with all these pretty young women right next door. I wouldn't be surprised if he was simply satisfying his curiosity.
Julia, is it possible Sarah Bosun killed herself?
I can't be sure. But she wouldn't have done it if she saw a dead spider. I know that.
Could you say the same about a live one?
Detective Μέρντοχ, what have you?
I found this spider in the victim's room. Have you determined Mrs. Bosun's time of death yet?
I believe it was around 3 in the morning.
Do you think it would be possible to determine when this arachnid shuffled off this mortal coil?
Shakespeare, Detective. Without experimentation, it would be impossible to tell. Why?
I need to know if the spider predeceased Mrs. Bosun.
You can place them with the others. You may need some more.
More? I scoured the station, Doctor, but he's as clean as a whistle. This is the last of them.
Go to your boarding house. I'm certain you'll find some in the attic.
Up in the attic? The attic is full of cobwebs.
Exactly. Oh, and try the stables after that. There'll be heaps there.
Heaps of spiders.
Yes.
Is this absolutely necessary?
Detective Μέρντοχ needs to know when the spider died. I've examined the beast, weighed it, but I can't determine the rate of dehydration unless I measure the same rate with a specimen of a similar size.
Well, I don't envy their fate.
They're just spiders, George.
They're incredibly useful creatures.
And the world is filled with plenty of them.
They do away with annoying pests. They're incredible architects. For the most part, they cohabitate with humans quite well. Perhaps not the Brazilian wandering spider who needs little provocation, but...
Don't fret, George. I'm sure he's not feeling any pain.
You can understand that as a police officer, I must get to the bottom of what happened to Sarah Bosun. Can anyone tell me how she came to fall to her death?
She was afraid.
We're all afraid. What makes her different?
She was terrified of spiders.
Spiders. They're tiny, not worth anything.
Perhaps one got into her room. You know that this entire area is scrubbed and dusted twice a day. I insist upon it. It would have been impossible for a spider to have gotten into a room, and even if it did,
Yes, of course. Sarah was getting better. Isn't that what you said? That we would all get better?
Be quiet, Harry.
Dr. Linden told me that what you are doing is a waste of time.
Well, he shouldn't have said that.
Please. Did anyone hear anything last night?
Yes. A giant spider terrifying Sarah.
Mrs. Kerr, your room is next to Sarah's. Did you hear anything?
I take a sleeping draft at night, Detective. If Sarah did call out, I didn't hear her.
Did anyone speak to Sarah last night before you all retired for the evening?
I did.
And how did she seem to you, Miss Krask?
She was crying.
What was she upset about?
She said that she had lost the love of her life. And then she didn't say anymore. She just asked me to play for her.
And you did?
Yes.
Imelda, that's wonderful.
I thought you were scared to play in front of people.
Mr. Phelps, stop it. You played for her, Imelda.
Sarah was different. She was trying so hard. She was so kind.
Detective Μέρντοχ, you must think us a very peculiar bunch. All of us frightened of what you must think is nothing.
I don't think you're peculiar. In fact, I completely understand.
I doubt that very much.
Young man, I do know what it's like to have fears that don't yield to reason. I am terrified of butterflies.
William, I'm sure you meant it kindly, but I don't want my patients to feel as if they're being patronized.
I'm not patronizing them.
Butterflies.
Since I was a child. I certainly hope that isn't the reaction you give your patients.
I'm sorry, it's just William Murdoch, the possessor of the most logical mind I know, being frightened of butterflies?
They make me uneasy, is all. Have you ever watched them? They're completely unpredictable. First they fly left, then they fly right, then straight at you. They defy logic.
Dragonflies do the same?
Dragonflies are different.
Why?
I don't know. They just are.
Dr. Ogden, word, please.
Of course. Dr. Clark.
I need to inform you that Dr. Linden has launched a formal complaint against your program. He wishes it terminated.
Well, he should have come to me.
He feels your therapy is putting your patients at risk.
Well, shouldn't I be the judge of that?
Ultimately, the practices of the doctors working in this institution are my responsibility. Dr. Linden suggested an alternate treatment regimen.
Pulling the patient's teeth. I have documentation. My patients are making positive strides.
Yet one of them killed themselves.
We don't know that. Detective Μέρντοχ of the Toronto Constabulary is investigating the matter.
Well, then the outcome could be troubling, no matter how it turns out. Either your therapy or one of your patients may be responsible for the poor woman's death.
Well, if that is the case, I shall resign.
Now, Dr. Ogden, you are well regarded here. I am just advising caution.
Dr. Linden, I'm sorry to inform you that I live to fight another day.
Dr. Ogden, I hold no grudge against you. It is just that I consider your methods a waste of time.
Well, that is where we differ.
I hear they found a dead spider in Sarah Bosen's room.
What of it?
If that is what caused her death, it would suggest your desensitization therapy may not be up to snuff.
I thought you said you had scoured the station.
Well, I was just getting him for you.
Of course you were, George. Excellent. He's the perfect size.
Webster.
Why is that policeman still here?
I didn't think killing oneself would be cause for so much attention.
We don't know what happened. He's simply investigating.
Investigating us?
They're just asking questions. What's wrong?
I don't want to be a part of this. Sarah's dead and it's your fault. You scared her to death.
Pauline! They found a dead spider in Sarah's room, but she wouldn't have been afraid of a dead spider.
How would you know?
I'd exposed her to dead spiders before. She didn't like them, but she wasn't particularly alarmed by them. Harry, I would never put any of you at risk.
We are at risk. There might be a killer in here.
Harry.
What about him?
He hated Sarah. He told me that he was happy that she was gone.
You forgot one name. Dr. Linden, he wants me out.
Enough that he would kill one of your patients? Is there something else, Julia?
I don't know if it means anything, but Imelda Krask said that Harry Phelps disliked Sarah.
Do you suspect him?
I don't think so. I find it hard to believe he's capable of murder. Maybe it was my fault. Perhaps I pushed Sarah too hard.
Julia,
She knew what she was in for. Maybe it was too much for her.
you said that she agreed to the treatment and that she was improving.
Yes.
Well, then it's not your fault.
anything to upset him, William.
I'll be careful. Mr. Phelps?
He should be here. That came from outside.
You did this! You did this! The horses, how could you?
What?
The horses, how could you? You say I'm not ready, and yet you unleash those monsters on me!
Don't hurt him! I did no such thing, Harry.
You did this! We're not ready for what you want to do with us! You should just leave us alone! You caused this! You caused what happened to Sarah!
William,
Yes, I know, Julia. You were with me. Are the horses usually stabled?
Yes.
And who tends to the stables?
I don't know.
So anyone could have had access?
Yes?
Julia, first the spider, now the horses. I believe someone is trying to scare your patients to death.
That's Webster.
What are you talking about?
He's a spider that I get on well with.
Of course he is.
Higgins, you have to distract her.
Well, how, George?
I don't know, Henry. Do you have even a bit of imagination?
Dr. Grace? A moment?
What is it, Constable Higgins?
I've secured 2 tickets to the music hall tonight. I was curious as to whether you'd like to attend.
With you, me?
George said it would be all right. He gave me permission to ask you.
Did he now? Well, in that case, I would be delighted to attend the music hall with you. And afterwards, we could go to this lounge. Oh, George, I didn't see you there. Whatever are you doing?
I'm not doing anything.
Put the specimen down, George. This is a murder investigation.
I'll get you another one.
No, George, he's perfect.
You didn't let the horses loose. Who did?
We don't know.
My father's coming to get me. I'm not staying here anymore.
Harry, that is your choice. But we believe that the horses were let go deliberately.
Of course they were. It's just a part of your treatment.
Did you see any other patients near the stables?
No.
Anyone else? Anyone from the hospital staff? Dr. Linden, perhaps?
No. And it wouldn't be him. He was kind to me. Could have been Pauline.
Pauline? Please, Harry, why do you think that it could have been Pauline?
She had it in for me.
Why do you say that?
I saw them. She and Sarah, together, they were unnatural. I looked into Sarah's room and I saw them. They were kissing.
Harry!
It's true, but I told on them.
Who did you tell?
Mr. Kerr and Mr. Bosun, that's who. I wrote them letters. They deserve to know what those women were.
Harry, you shouldn't have done that.
What they were doing was ungodly and evil.
Mr. Phelps, whether or not you choose to remain in Dr. Ogden's care, I must insist that you stay in the city.
I didn't do anything.
Isn't it true that you disliked Sarah?
I didn't like what she was doing with Pauline Kerr, that's all. I certainly didn't hurt her.
Well then, you have nothing to worry about.
I visited Sarah the day she died. When I left around 4 o'clock, she was in very good spirits.
Others in her group seem to think she was quite upset.
Not around me.
There have been suggestions that your wife and Mrs. Kerr were involved in an unnatural liaison. I believe Mr. Phelps wrote you a letter detailing this?
He did? But he didn't need to.
You were aware of this?
Detective, if I can be frank. Both Sarah and I knew what kind of people we were. I cared for her deeply, but ours was a marriage of convenience. I had no desire to spend time in jail. It allowed us both to follow our hearts.
I see.
I loved Sarah in my way, Detective Μέρντοχ. Our marriage also served both of us very well. I certainly had no reason to hurt her or to change my situation.
Both Harry and Imelda said that Sarah was very distressed that night. It wasn't about her phobia, though, was it?
No, it wasn't.
Harry claims to have witnessed the two of you in an intimate act.
I see.
I understand from your husband that you're no longer enjoying relations.
That is correct. But we will be again.
Pauline, do you find yourself inclined to attraction to the same...
That's over. And it was a terrible mistake. That is not who I want to be.
Is that why you quarrel?
She accused me of being a coward. I'm not. She preyed on me.
So you intend to return to your husband?
I intend to get better. I intend to be normal. I have no intention of living my life as a sophist.
I'd still be looking at Sarah Bosun's husband, Murdoch. If I found out that the missus was in a Boston marriage...
Sir, the man has admitted to being a homosexual.
If he's telling the truth.
I doubt he would lie to a police officer.
Perhaps he'd rather admit to being a mandrake than a murderer. Hodge?
I want her released to my care.
I don't think that that's wise.
Were you aware of this incident with Sarah Bosun?
I was just recently informed.
You say you're a doctor of the mind, but you can't cure my wife of her fear of feathers, and under your care, she's become a sophist.
Mr. Kerr.
She's coming in with me, and she's going to obey her husband as any proper woman should.
Mr. Kerr, I cannot permit you to abuse your wife. It's all right. It's all right. She's sedated. I'm not sure when you can talk to her.
Right. Miss Krask? Do you have something you'd like to say?
Dr. Linden. I saw him in the ward earlier today.
There'd better be a good reason for this.
Well, these are yours, yes? There is stable dirt on them.
What of it? I ride the horses from time to time.
Of course you do. I also found this in your office. Dr. Linden, did you deposit feathers in Pauline Kerr's room in order to frighten her into leaving the hospital?
Preposterous.
Did you also go into the stables and release the horses in order to terrify Harry Phelps?
Detective, you have an overactive imagination.
The feather was found in your office. Imelda Krask confirms seeing you in the vicinity of Pauline Kerr's room.
And do you believe the words of an inmate of an asylum?
It won't be that difficult to confirm. All I need is a sample of your finger marks. What have you, George?
Sir, Dr. Linden is a very poor housekeeper. Found more than one of these. It's a common dock spider, the same species as that found in Mrs. Sarah Bosun's room. There were plenty more in his office.
Horse manure on your shoes, feathers in your office, and spiders in your rafters. Perhaps it's time for the truth, Doctor.
I wanted Dr. Ogden to know she was on the wrong track. But her treatment didn't work.
You wanted Harry and Mrs. Kerr to break down.
Yes.
So you killed her. You killed an innocent woman in order to advance your professional standing. You placed a live spider in her room.
I did not. She was already dead when I put the spider in her room.
Dr. Linden, was the spider alive or dead?
Dead. Wouldn't handle a lie when I hate the damn things.
My methodology was simple. Every hour on the hour, I killed a spider of the same size and weight as the one found in Sarah's bedroom. Using the scales from the university, I determined that the first spider weighed 2 grams. The live spiders of same dimension weighed 5 grams.
Ingenious, Dr. Grace. By determining the rate of dehydration, you were able to establish when the spider from Mrs. Bosun's room died.
Or you mean shuffled off this mortal coil?
Exactly.
Webster, you killed him?
George, I didn't.
Webster?
I prefer not to pursue it. George, I didn't use the gas on him. He must have died of natural causes.
Dr. Grace, how long ago did the spider from Mrs. Bosun's room die?
Anywhere between 20 and 30 hours. The spider predeceased her.
So Dr. Linden placed a dead spider inside of Mrs. Bosun's room after she died?
It would seem so.
Well, then if he's telling the truth, neither Dr. Linden or the spider are responsible for her death. The victim's husband had no motive and an ironclad alibi. He was at the Yeoman Club all night.
Oh, that one. I see.
I also believe he truly cared for his wife. Harry Phelps didn't like Mrs. Kerr or Mrs. Bosun. He thought that they were sinners.
Perhaps he tried to convert Mrs. Bosun.
He was a peeping Tom. Dr. Ogden kept him locked in his room.
What about the cuckolded husband, Kerr? Could he have paid a midnight visit, honor besmirched and all that?
Certainly possible.
Imelda the fiddler?
No motive. In fact, quite the opposite. Sarah was helping her with her shyness. She was reliant on the victim.
Doesn't make her innocent.
No. No, it doesn't.
Dr. Ogden, I wanted to inform you that Dr. Linden has been relieved of his position.
Well, the damage has been done, sir. Mr. Kerr is coming for his wife this evening. Mr. Phelps is gone, and Mrs. Bosun is dead.
She can see us, you know. Mrs. Krask. Your patient notes said she never performed in front of people. Yet here we are, and she's playing. Perhaps you are doing more good than you imagine.
Dr. Clark, can you use your influence to see that Mrs. Kerr remains in my care?
She was committed voluntarily.
By her husband.
My authority doesn't supersede his.
Even if we know he's going to take her home and force himself upon her?
She is his wife. He can do as he wishes.
Imelda Krask? I don't think so, William.
Then Pauline Kerr. She was the one who broke off the relationship. Perhaps she was worried Sarah Bosun would want to continue it.
So Pauline killed her? She's a sapphist, not a psychotic. It's curious what people are afraid of.
I'm not afraid, Julia. They just make me uneasy.
When did this start?
Julia, please, I'm not one of your patients.
Humor me.
I don't know, I suppose around the age of 8. Julia, where did you get this?
It was a gift from Pauline. Her husband's company makes them.
May I use your telephone?
Of course.
Hello. Police station house number 4, please. Constable Crabtree. Julia, I think it's possible the killer may have come from outside of the asylum. Mrs. Kerr's room's directly behind this vent.
So this is the access point?
Possibly. George, could you please remove this grate?
Sir, right away. Right this way, Doctor.
What is it, Constable Crabtree?
Detective Μέρντοχ wants to show you something. Here, sir.
All set, George.
Yes, indeed. Close your eyes, Doctor. Now you can open them.
Diabolical.
I'm glad you've seen the light.
She is your wife.
Well, thank you for acknowledging that. I'm sure you did your best. Isn't this my wife's room?
After the feathers, she was terrified to re-enter her room. I decided to put her here.
Mr. Kerr.
Where's my wife?
I'd like to show you something.
What's this about?
This will only take a moment. Mr. Kerr, you are a glassmaker. Isn't that right?
Yes,
Well, then you're familiar with the properties of prisms.
I am.
Now, George. Can you imagine what it would be like for someone who's deathly frightened of these creatures? But then you already know all about it, don't you?
You think I did this?
You were here visiting your wife the night that Sarah Bosin died. She was asleep in her room, sedated, as she often is at night. You removed the grate between the two rooms, and placed a prism inside, one made by your company. You then placed the spider in front of it. You knew that would be enough to scare her to death.
I didn't touch her. I didn't push her.
Not directly, but you caused her death. As surely as if you had pushed her out the window yourself.
You can't prove anything.
So you don't deny it? You killed her. You killed Sarah? How could you? I love her!
I'm your husband. You're supposed to love me.
I don't, and I never did.
Pauline, please.
I despise you.
I didn't push her. She jumped on her own accord. It was her own weak mind that killed her.
Mr. Kerr, come with me.
Has anyone told you you're off your nut?
Emily.
It's just an insect, George.
Actually, if you must know, he's an arachnid. And I've grown quite fond of watching his quiet industry.
Throw it out.
Yes, I suppose you're right. Oh, my goodness. He's alive. Emily, look. He's alive.
Crabtree, take these down to the evidence room.
There's more to your fear of butterflies than you let on.
No, there is not.
William, phobias are often the fear of a specific thing. Heights, horses, enclosed spaces, but sometimes they're markers for another fear.
Julia, I just don't like butterflies.
Why?
As I told you, they're erratic.
And that is an irritant. But perhaps they represent a different fear. An unpleasant or terrifying memory.
What?
You know they're harmless, don't you?
Yes.
Then what troubles you about them?
Please don't open the cage.
I won't. William, I was thinking about what happened when you were 8. When you started to feel uneasy about them. Your mother died then, didn't she?
Yes.
Could the two be related?
My mother's death and butterflies?
Think.
I saw her. I found her dead body. I moved to her. Turned her over. She was surrounded by butterflies.
They won't harm you. They're just representative of a terrible memory. They're harmless creatures, William.
see? There's no need to be afraid.